Hello and welcome to Wednesday Newsday, your number one resource for the entire week's worth of VR news. You know, this is one of those weeks where I look at all the exciting things that are happening in the VR space and it just makes me happy because a lot of fun things are going on. Full-on Quest 3 leaks, Google picking up some pretty massive VR investments. Turns out Bonelab has been very successful, but also very divisive. The largest VR esports tournament ever just happened, and Gamestop is betting heavy on VR. And of course, there's so much more. So let's just get right into the news. This is a good one. Let's start this one off with the comeback of the good old smell-o-vision. People have kind of always had this fascination with creating immersive experiences where you can smell what's happening either on TV or at a movie theater, and this idea dates all the way back to 1939 with the original smell-o-vision. And of course, none of that really ever took off for a wide variety of reasons, but that idea just makes sense to eventually come to VR in some way, shape, or form. Imagine being able to pick up a rose and smell it in VR chat, or playing Bonelab and getting to smell gunpowder or null bodies. I don't know, maybe they smell like oranges, who knows? And on paper, it would add quite a bit to the experience, but no one has really nailed it. Feel Real, a company that tried to do this a few years ago, ended up getting completely blocked by the US government because the device was technically a vape, putting it under very heavy regulation. The haptic solution Celia is awesome and exists now, but it's limited in sense and can be a little cumbersome both in software and hardware. And despite things not really taking off like crazy for any of these ideas, it doesn't mean the idea is dead. Arizona State University just published a breakout research paper on bringing realistic smell in VR, creating what they call the Smell Engine, a system that works seamlessly with hardware and software to provide a wide range of olfactory cues within virtual reality. And this idea might sound a little silly, but their research really does back up the idea that this can offer a pretty next level experience if done right. Quote, "Olfaction can evoke and enhance a range of emotions, and emotions are the base layer of human thought and action. Ubiquitous digital smell could benefit people by expanding their digital media toolset to enhance different emotions and their perception of what is real." End quote. Currently, they're primarily using grant money to build VR training simulations for astronauts, but it's pretty easy to see where this research could eventually land, and it's smelling pretty good. Right now is a pretty exciting time for VR hardware. The Pimax Crystal is finally on its way in November, the Pico 4 has launched in Europe, and I'm still trying to get my hands on one to review, by the way. The Quest Pro is just a couple weeks away, likely to be released at the upcoming Meta Connect event, and there's so much more on the way. But something pretty exciting just went down, and the entirety of what looks to be the Quest 3 was leaked by Sadleets Bradley, revealing almost all of the details of what is called internally at Meta Project Stinson. Likely not due until sometime next year, the Quest 3 is looking to be a Quest Pro, but cut down pretty significantly to bring the price down to a consumer level, which is appreciated considering the Pro is likely going to be north of $1,000. Meta seems to be aiming for the $400 price range while having the full color pass-through for good mixed reality content. Also, an improved field of view using counter-rotated displays and pancake lenses, and the return of the IPD adjustment wheel. Larger speakers are also seen on the device, but the most exciting part is an upgraded chipset. The Quest 2 currently having an XR2 Gen 1, and this would have an XR2 Gen 2. The one interesting thing it seems is that there will be no face and eye tracking like are on the Quest Pro, which I totally disagree with. I was hoping that all next generation VR headsets would have this capability, but the XR2 only has so much bandwidth for so many camera feeds. Basically, more cameras equals more costs, and face and eye tracking add more cameras. And since they are trying to squeeze a $1,500-ish device into something around $400, I guess I get it. They're just focusing on mixed reality and AR pass-through more than social VR and foveated rendering. It is going to be interesting though to see PSVR 2 have these capabilities while the Quest does not. And of course, these are just early leaks. These could be totally off or be totally accurate, and I will be updating you guys every step along the way either way. And maybe we'll even get to see it at this year's Connect, which I will be streaming on Twitch, so definitely come check it out. It's always a fun time to watch with everybody. But either way, I guess we'll have to see. So, Bonelab. Obviously, I have already made a full video on my thoughts regarding the game that I posted on release day, and my thoughts were very positive. But let's take a look at the first week of its release, because it turns out that while Bonelab was definitely one of the most hyped VR games of all time, it's also probably one of the most divisive VR games out there. Kinda kinda like I said in that last video, you either really love it or really hate it, and along with typical hype cycles of things, when something is super hyped like Bonelab was, it makes it even easier to hate or love. So now that Bonelab has been released for almost a week, let's take a look at what happened, because I don't think anyone quite expected this. I know I certainly didn't. For one, Stress Level Zero hasn't talked about sales numbers at all, but the amount of reviews that Bonelab have accrued in just a week is staggering, immediately hitting top selling on the Quest store and pulling in over 10,000 reviews across Steam VR and Quest, which is pretty good for a VR game, and it's a sign that Bonelab has sold really well. And the reviews for the most part are really positive, but there is a pretty large string of negative reviews that I want to talk about. Apparently, some people are dealing with crashes on boot, a few pretty funny bugs, some performance issues, but the largest problems seem to be controller mapping with the Index, Vive 1s, and WMR controllers. And the problem all comes back to how kind of weird OpenXR can be sometimes. The funny thing is that I actually ran into this completely unplayable situation with my own Index and the Steam VR version of Bonelab. But my Steam VR situation is a little different than most people, having connected WMR controllers in the past, Varjos, Pimaxes. I just have a lot of weird plugins, and sometimes I run into issues that only I have. So I was guessing that was the problem and it was just a me problem, but apparently not, because this is decently widespread. And while I did fix the issue by just going to a different PC, further making me think it was my computer's problem, it is actually an OpenXR or game issue here, and Stress Level Zero has acknowledged it and they are working on a fix. And a fix is great, of course, but it does kind of suck that Boneworks was a game with flawless Index support, and the sequel has a few hundred people that are unable to play until a fix comes. And I'm definitely hoping it comes fast. A lot of other criticism with Bonelab are the campaign and its more intense moments or lack of a super cohesive story, which is totally fair. Maybe adding a skip button for some people would be nice for the opening scene, if you know what I mean. While I personally found the moment impactful, some people find it very triggering. But all in all, the real reason I personally was excited about Bonelab and made a bunch of videos on it wasn't even necessarily the story mode, it was the mod support. And believe me, I understand that some people don't care about mods, or they just don't want to take the time to do it, or some people even rated Bonelab as it was rather than what it's capable of. But I think everyone has been pleasantly surprised with the insane modding community that has already spawned for Bonelab. Already, hundreds and hundreds of avatars have been imported, tons of maps, custom levels, and it's just available to everyone for free. I was hoping that this level of community support would come for the game within 5 months or a year, but within 5 days, the game's content has already inflated to more content than almost anyone could ever experience. So things are looking pretty darn good. And maybe I'll showcase some of my favorite mods in a video, but those Index and controller issues still need to be fixed. And if you've played through, or maybe stopped your playthrough or finished it or been modding, let me know your opinions on Bonelab below. Do you think it was overhyped? Do you think it was amazing? Terrible? Have you modded it? Let me know. It's actually one of the more constructive conversations that we've ever had regarding VR games, so I like this stuff. Two pretty massive things happened this week that show some really exciting promise for the entire VR industry. Let's start with arguably the biggest announcement in VR retail history. Gamestop has been quietly making big pushes into the VR world, and just announced one of its more interesting partnerships to officially carry and sell Varjo arrows both in-store and online at select locations, which is pretty nuts considering the Arrow is a very expensive prosumer headset, albeit a very high quality one. But looking into the further future of GameStop getting into the VR industry regarding retail, I'm kind of seeing something even more exciting. Right now, if you want to buy a VR headset and try it before you buy it, you either have to know someone or find a demo station somewhere, or just watch videos and hope that you like it. But if GameStops all over the country and world had headsets in store, it could be a dedicated place for people to try a variety of hardware. And we all know that once you try it, as long as you have a good experience, you'll immediately see how cool virtual reality actually is. And this sort of thing goes a long way to get people away from the previous misconception that VR is this terrible, nauseating Google Cardboard experience. And I think this is a good move for GameStop too. When most people are buying their games online, well, GameStop has to find some way to get people in store. And having awesome VR demos and headsets for sale in store seems like a pretty darn good idea. And plus, even if people don't buy a $2,000 VR headset after trying an Arrow in store, they'll at least see that VR has come a long way, and that goes a long way. On the other side of massive VR industry news, pretty much the largest VR esports tournament ever just took place in Miami in the form of the Vail Miami Major, with a $35,000 prize pool and players from around the world coming into play. I actually attended this event, and holy cow, I was blown away. VR esports may not sound like the coolest or funnest thing to some people, but having hundreds of people get together to watch professional players duke it out in an arena with a full production team behind it was amazing. Also, I got to meet up with Virtual Reality Oasis and Cass and Gamertag and J-Man Curly. Like I said, it was really just awesome to watch and awesome to be there. The final match came close between Vortex and Wrecked, but Vortex came out victorious, taking a massive trophy and around $20,000 to fuel their next round of esport tournaments. It may not seem like it now, but VR esports are on their way, and events like this are paving the way there. And speaking of the industry, Google just made a massive investment in SideQuest, with Google's venture arm bringing $12 million to the company. As we all know, the Quest 2 and most other standalone VR headsets all run on Android, and Google is directly behind the Android operating system, so it makes sense that Google would invest in SideQuest, an alternative store for VR and AR software. This move also puts a Google executive on the SideQuest board, and he had some pretty interesting words to say. Quote, "We feel the time is right, and the SideQuest team has potential to be a leader in this sector that finally feels primed for prime time. The company's ultimate goal is to become a main hub and software layer for the broader XR ecosystem," end quote. And yeah, that's exactly why I love SideQuest. It puts pressure on the entire XR ecosystem because they have built a store that is independent of any other hardware manufacturer. And hopefully this funding allows them to keep pushing their ideas further. PSVR 2 is ramped up as reports claim 2 million units will be available for sale next year, and that Sony states that the demand for PSVR 2 will be significantly higher than the original PSVR. So far, the PSVR 2 does look pretty good, but even buying a PS5 at all right now is almost impossible unless you're on a waitlist or buy from a scalper. But regardless, the games are looking really awesome, and rumor has it that Half-Life Alyx may be coming to their platform as well. But we'll just have to see if that actually happens. And we don't know price or concrete ship dates yet, but that will likely be coming soon. But now it's time for question of the week from PDarg. I don't know how to say that. For those who are looking for a complete upgrade from the Valve Index, do I think this will be coming soon, or anything coming regarding this? Well, a lot of the industry right now is just focusing hard on making cheaper, more readily available VR headsets that can kind of do it all. The focus just hasn't been on high quality PCVR gear. But there are a few things coming that will likely threaten my Index as my daily driver, possibly Pimax, but we'll have to see on that one. But there's another project non-Valve related that I'm really excited about, and I'll talk about it literally as soon as I can. And of course, the Quest Pro looks pretty good, but we'll have to see on that as well. And that's question of the week. Leave your own down below, and I may just answer yours next. I wanted to throw a reminder that if you're in the San Diego area for TwitchCon, or just in the area in general, I'm throwing a massive VR community get-together, and all of that information will be down below. It's also free. The event will also take place in VR in case you can't make it, so I hope to see you there. I also wanted to say thank you to all of my Patreon supporters, especially my Omegas. I couldn't do any of this without you, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and next week I'll be coming back with some freaking awesome content that I'm pumped about. So don't forget to like this video if you loved it, subscribe if you want more of this, and hit that freaking bell if you just can't live without it. Much love, Thrill out.